Okay, let's go ahead and get started. How to find people who are going to get you into the agency. I'm going to cruise through this topic I'm teaching you today. By the way, I have an entire course that I built. I had planned on selling it, and then I said, you know what, I'm not going to sell it. I'm just using it with my customers. But it is the most complete course on business development. I actually built it as a way to help people get into the government space and become good at business development. And so this whole week, I've been trying to pull out modules and just share them with you. And so I'm going to teach you everything that's in there. The value you get that is in the course when you go in there and look at it. And this is for sustaining members, by the way. You have free access to the course and the membership. The value is I show you in there. And today I'm going to be telling you everything to do and how to do it. I'm just not showing you as much because I got 25 minutes, right? We're going to rock and roll. But I want to cover a couple of things, and starting with, how do you find the names, numbers, and emails? And throughout this training, hopefully Gus will be able to find some of our previous training, and we've done a lot of it on this topic. But how do you find the phone numbers and emails in particular? I'll talk a lot about how to find the names today. But we've got whole trainings where we've done 30 minutes just on how do you find phone numbers and emails. So we're going to talk about that. And I want to focus on two main areas when I think about finding names. The first thing is keeping in mind that people fill a particular role, right? They have job titles, but they're filling a role. And I'm going to talk to you about one of the three, or the three different roles they might be filling as it relates to sales. And then I'm going to talk about 10 ways you can find people. So in this first part, I just want to kind of go down on that fairly fast. And let me just track to make sure I'm tracking what's here. Okay. So when I talk about roles, I'm pulling this from sales. And there's a particular sales methodology that I've tracked over the years. Neil Rackman is the first one who ever introduced me to it. And you can go look at some of his books out there, Neil Rackman. But he introduced to me this idea of when I look in sales and I'm looking at people's roles, they fall into one of three roles. A person at your federal agency that you're trying to target, they're either a focus of receptivity, they're a focus of dissatisfaction, or a focus of power. And briefly, what that means is a focus of receptivity is a person who's willing and able to talk to you about their agency. They're not buying anything. They actually don't even have the problem, but they're willing to talk to you about their agency. They're willing to help you navigate their agency. They're even willing to make introductions, right? And so they're a receptive person to you. They're not doing it for any particular reason other than they think if they help you, they're helping their agency, right? And so that's a focus of receptivity. And I'm going to go through in a minute and give you examples of focuses of receptivity, because it's important to know what type of job titles fit into these roles as you start trying to find people who can help you get into an agency when you don't know anybody. So the first one role is focus of receptivity. The second one is focus of dissatisfaction. And the idea of focus of dissatisfaction, that's the program office generally, right? These are the people with the problem. They have a challenge or they have a goal that they're trying to achieve, and they're looking for you to help them. So focuses of dissatisfaction, not overly happy with the way it currently is. And then focuses of power are the basically the money people, the people who can make the decision to buy from you. In the federal government, right, that's the contracting officer. So let me give you examples at the agency level, and then I'm going to give you a couple of examples for large primes and small businesses as well. Because if you're trying to get into an agency and you don't know anyone, I would recommend that you try to go in through agency personnel. You try to go in through new friends you meet at large primes and new friends you meet at small businesses. And so as you go down this path, I want to give you some examples of those three roles in each one of these groups of people. Okay, so focus of receptivity. In the federal agency, really good example is the small business professional, right? We sometimes hear the term OSDBU. They're very high, but lower level down closer to the contracts is a small business professional or specialist. They're called different things, Deputy of Small Business Program. You can actually, by the way, go to our website and download an entire directory of over 1,000 names of small business professionals and some for large primes as well that I'll talk about in a minute. But actually, let me pause for a second. Do me a favor in the chat. Tell me right now, have you downloaded the directory from our website? It's free on our website, and it has over 1,000 names of these focuses of receptivity, small business specialists within agencies, over 1,000 agency names. Just put, yes, I got it, or not yet into the chat. And let me know on that whether you've downloaded that directory. This directory is phenomenal because when we talk about how do you get into an agency when you don't know anyone, and I'm telling you focuses of receptivity are a great start, well, that directory has over 1,000 focuses of receptivity for federal agencies across the board. It also has over 100 small business liaisons. I'll talk about them in a minute, but these large primes focuses of receptivity. So if you haven't downloaded that, definitely download it from govconchamber.com. It's right there on the homepage. You just click and get it. But let me know whether you've got it or not, because that's a really valuable tool that we put together for you, for industry. Another example really quickly of focus receptivity that you want to kind of track on is at the Navy, as an example, they have program executive offices and project offices. The deputy directors have been designated as, let's call them a small business focus receptivity. Their job is to serve a little bit as the small business liaisons out there when somebody's trying to come in and learn about their program office. And so as you have more experience in government, and you're going into a different agency, definitely try to find those deputy program managers. Those are people who would probably be able to navigate you through their program executive office. So from an agency level, that's the focus of receptivity. Actually, let me just stick with focus of receptivity across the board. It might help me go a little faster. The next one is large business teaming partners. Whether you're teaming with them or not already, if you want to reach out, I mentioned the small business directory. Inside of there is the small business liaison officer. That is a perfect focus of receptivity over there. And then small businesses, really anyone who's willing to talk to you, but at a small business, the owner almost is the focus of receptivity. You could reach in and talk to any business owner. And for most of the small businesses, we owners are willing to take a call. Sure, let's take a call. Is there a fit between us? Is there somebody in your company I can talk to about maybe going into Department of Education or Navy or whatever? So from a focus of receptivity, those are the type of people. When you think about focuses of dissatisfaction, these are the program office personnel at agencies, right? So anybody in a program office is generally your focus of dissatisfaction. As you get fancier and you're doing more work in an agency, you'll find that program office's customers are often your focuses of dissatisfaction as well. But just getting into an agency, you typically want to know what program office do I want to get into, and that's where you find those names. Focuses of dissatisfaction for large primes, I recommend business developers and capture leads. These people are responsible for hearing about opportunities that are out there, building relationships, identifying teams that they can get on, or identifying small businesses that can team with them. And so these people would probably be open to talking with you. And especially I say they're a focus of dissatisfaction because their dissatisfaction is, do I have a strong enough team to win these opportunities? Do I have enough relationships to go after a particular opportunity or go after an agency, right? So that's the focus of dissatisfaction at both the large and the small business, is finding people who are business developers or capture type leads. And then also the small business, every one of these roles is filled by the owner. The owners of small businesses, many hats. All right, and the last one for just understanding the roles is focus of power. At the agency level, this is the contracting officer. Only the contracting officer is going to buy and sign a contract with small business, right? And so you want to find them. In the defense side, it's called KO, civilian side, CO, but contracting officers and contract specialists, right? Even though the contracting officer is the one signing it, those contracting specialists have a ton of power, very big influence because they work tightly as an acquisition team. I'm familiar with something going on in state, and listening to them, they have 16 different acquisition personnel working on one team. Yes, there's one lead. Yes, there's going to be one person who signs that commitment to awarding the contract, but those 16 people are all focuses of power because that's where the decision is being made. At the large prime, the focus of power, and you want to track on this, is senior leadership. So as you build relationships with business developers or capture leads, you'll ask them in a large prime, hey, how's the decision made about me being put on your team, for example? They'll tell you. They'll say, oh, well, I got a director and I got a VP. And then, they meet once every 2 weeks and decide whether our opportunities move forward. And so you'll learn about that. You want to learn who those people are. And now you're identifying the focuses of power at a large teaming partner, and focus of power in small business is the owner. So hopefully that made sense. Those are the roles. I want to go through now on giving you 10 ways of being able to find people, right? I mean, that's really what today's about, is how do you get into an agency when you don't know anyone? Well, you need to find people. You need to find out who they are, get their names, et cetera. And so I want to give that to you as we move forward. But by the way, do me a favor. If you understand what I was saying about focuses of receptivity, dissatisfaction, power, just put in know the roles into the chat. Let me know you're there and you understand what I'm saying. Know the roles. Know the role of the people you're trying to find. That way, when I give you, for example, these 10 different ways of how to find the right people or the people in these various roles, you'll begin to identify when you find somebody, which role do they look like they're falling into. So in no particular order, number one that I'm starting with is where you can find the right people. It's just go to an agency website, right? If you go into an agency website, often you can find their org chart, you can find their directory. I mean, shoot, some of the agencies I go into, they have a whole directory of every single employee. And if I bounce around, I can start matching some information here to some information here, and I can go into an agency website staff directory and I can get their email or phone number. But the part I really love is when I can find organizational charts and begin to see the information. I was talking about the IRS the other day in some training, and I was saying how I went in there and by digging down into the website, I found this one document that just listed out, I don't know, over 100 people. And it took me a little while to find it, but when I found it, it just opened the gates wide for me being able to talk to them. And remember that tip at the very beginning of today's training, I said, some will, some won't. So what? Well, if I have 100 names that I just got, now I begin to decide who to reach out to. And when I reach out to them, some will talk to me, some won't. So what, right? That's okay. Another part of the website is the agency forecast. Often they have an agency forecast tool of some sort on their website, and you want to reach into them. In fact, on my site, so if you go to govconchamber.com, I've got a directory up there that we put together and we keep updated whenever we hear about new forecasts. But in there is a directory of, I don't know, 100 plus agency forecasts in there. And so you want to download that. And by the way, tell me in the chat, have you already done that? Have you already got the forecast, got it? And if you haven't, say not yet, but let me know, do you even know that this exists? It's free, it's on our site, and it will save you hundreds of hours of research. But the reason I like it is because in a forecast, you often will have names associated. Sometimes those names are focuses of receptivity, like small business specialists tied to opportunities. Sometimes they're contracting officers, and sometimes they're program office people. Sometimes those people will talk to you, sometimes they won't talk to you. So what, right? But at least in the forecast, you can often find a bunch of names, a bunch of people that can get you started. And so if you go into a forecast, you might find opportunities that are related to cybersecurity, for example, cyber training like Darius, right? You might find opportunities that are related to what you do so that you can then reach out and call them and not talk about the opportunity, but just reach out and do an introduction meeting. Well, now you're starting to get into the agency. How do you get into the agency when you don't know anyone? We'll start by finding names and numbers and emails and then doing introduction calls. And a forecast and a website is a great place to get going there. Number two is, and this goes directly with small businesses, right? So look on agency websites. You can also look on company websites. And the reason I say this is if you're trying to get into an agency, keep this in mind. The agency is here. There's three big paths to getting in. Actually, I can name a bunch of paths, but three big paths are finding agency personnel to get into the agency and start talking and building relationships, finding large primes to get you in, and finding small primes that can get you in. You begin to build relationships with them so that it helps you get into the agency. And so go to a company website for the small businesses or largest, and you can find people's names and numbers. At a small business, you're finding the owners or some of the senior leaders. But over on a large prime, you can go in. For example, Booz Allen, one of my favorite places to go is their blog, because when I go into their blog and I'm researching artificial intelligence, for example, I'll see this interesting article, but at the bottom, it's written by Johnny. And if you click on more about Johnny or something, then it says, hey, Johnny and these other three people are in charge of Booz Allen's Navy-related artificial intelligence projects or something. Now I got 4 names related to artificial intelligence in DoD. So on a website, you can find a lot of this information. Also on large primes, you can find contract vehicle program managers and contract administrators. These are great focuses of receptivity that might introduce you to people who are program managers, for example, on a particular task order at a particular agency you might be trying to pursue. So company websites, great place to find names that will begin to get you in. Agency documents, I share these every single day, strategic plans and annual reports, industry day slides, things like that. I might even talk about that later. But when you go in and you find agency documents, you can find a lot of information. I just shared today a document from, I can't remember. It's CISA. So from Department of Homeland Security, the cybersecurity infrastructure, blah, 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 whatever, infrastructure security agency, right? CISA. In there was like 30 people's names, and it was golden because in there it's program managers. It's not contract officers or small business specialists. We love them, but if I can get to a program office, that's where I want to go. Well, I had key names in there, and that was awesome. And this came from an agency document. So it's something you want to track. So number 4, right, as I'm just moving down, FPDS. FPDS is out there as the Federal Procurement Data System. And if you go in there and look for opportunities at an agency you're trying to target, if I was going to do it right now and I said, hey, I want to build a list of 100 names that I can begin to pursue to see if I can get in the door, I would look in FPDS for the last 18 months, contracts awarded somewhere in my range, right? I might type cybersecurity, cyber training, right? Darius, I'm going to have that sunk in my head by the end of this. I might be looking at a NAICS code that's kind of related to it, whatever it is. I'm going to search and I'm going to get a ton of results back from FPDS, like hundreds at least, if not thousands. And from those, I'll go in and I'll be able to see contracting officers sometimes, right? Some of the FPDS entries have them, some of them don't. So what? But the idea is if you go in and look at it, if you're not familiar with FPDS, and there's a whole separate training from me briefly, but go to fpds.gov and they have a full training. But when you have an item that looks good to you and you click on view and you see the full item in the top right-hand corner, you'll see the name of a contracting officer usually, or a contract specialist. There's a person who could potentially help you get in the door of an agency and start building your relationships within the agency. So fpds.gov, big one, right? The next one is SAM. If you go into SAM and you look at especially RFIs and RFPs that are dropped, sometimes the awards, but mostly I'm looking at RFPs and RFIs. When you go to the bottom of an opportunity that you like, and again, look in the past 18 months as well as what's coming out in the future, when you look at it and you filter it by the agency you're trying to get into, generally at the bottom of every opportunity are 2 people's names at least, right? And so it's this ability to find those people's names and reach out. They're almost always contract officer and a contract specialist, but they'll get you in the door. So 5 was SAM.gov. 6 is DSBS, the Dynamic Small Business Search. And so this one is a great tool if you're trying to find small business owners. There's 300,000 plus firms in there. Now it's getting really confusing on how they do stuff in there. But the beauty of it is I can pick any small business I want to reach out to and find a major point of contact within that organization that could help me perhaps get into the agency that they're in. And 99% of the time, it's the business owner. And so what I might do is I might go into FPDS or some other tool and find small businesses that are winning in the agency I want to get into, and then go over to DSBS and try to find the names, numbers, and email addresses for the business owners of that small business that's in there. So hopefully that makes sense. DSBS, the Dynamic Small Business Search tool, that tool is great for finding small business owners, names and emails and phone numbers. So it's perfect for reaching out to small businesses. Next place is Google, and just regular Google searches. I'm going to cruise past that. But if I wanted to get into agencies, an example of a search I might do on Google, just to give you some search criteria I might use quotation marks around the email domain of the agency I'm trying to get into. If I'm trying to get into army.mil, for example, I might search for @army.mil. And what it will return, if I keep it in quotes, it'll return email addresses that are army.mil. This takes a little bit of finesse as you're filtering it, but take the time to learn your tool. But if you do this search on Google, what you can do is say, hey, only show me ones that have been updated in the last 30 days even, or whatever, or last 6 months. And when you do that, you're seeing current activity. And what I tend to find, what I like, is that it might show me an industry day or some document that says, if you want more information, talk to John Smith, who's the head of this kind of thing. I'm starting to learn people's information. I might find him as a speaker somewhere or something else. And it gives me a way to start reaching out to them and contacting them. But the first step of getting into an agency when you don't know anyone is to build a list of names. In our 7-step process, we call that targeting. And so when you use Google, you're able to do that targeting. And going with Google, you can use LinkedIn. Not only can you use some general search criteria I just mentioned, but let's say I'm trying to get into the Navy, and I'm just using this one because it sticks in my head. In the Navy, there's a program executive office called PEO Digital. And if I wanted to go get into even that small of a component within the overall Navy, then I could go onto LinkedIn and they have a company page, right? It's just a page inside of LinkedIn that people tie themselves to. And so if I go to that page, it will show me people, people who are saying they're employees at PEO Digital, and I'll find 200 to 400 names. And that's the start, right? Not only do I have the ability to start engaging them, et cetera, on LinkedIn, but now that I got their names, I can go do offline research, Google, and find their phone numbers and emails, but I can still message them right in LinkedIn when the time is right. But LinkedIn is a phenomenal place to find hundreds and hundreds of names inside of an agency that you would want to begin to target. I already mentioned number 9 here, the GovCon Chamber of Commerce directory. So we got 3 main directories. Make sure you get out there and visit that and download them. They're free, and they're easily worth tens of thousands of dollars, right? I spent years building them. And then the last one is industry decks. I've talked about this before. So industry events or briefing decks after the fact. So if you attend an industry event, you can meet people. I talked about at the very beginning of this when today I just shared the CISA industry day that happened earlier this year. And in there was 10 or 20 key people that were in there. If I had attended that event, maybe I could talk to them if it's in person. I know that Crane Naval Surface Warfare Center, they're having an event and it's going to be in person. Well, when you go there, there'll be all sorts of program office related people because they want to engage industry with their people so that they can learn from each other. And so attending industry day events is a great way to meet people. A lot of agencies host it, sometimes PTACs or others host it, but finding those. And then the flip side to that is if you didn't attend it, just go into sam.gov or something and find past industry days, the slide decks, and you'll be able to see people's names in there. And then you can follow up saying, hey, I missed the industry day. Could we talk though? So those are 10 different ways of finding people. I did want to talk about how to prepare for meetings and how to have meetings that'll get you invited back, but I'm running out of time and I always end on time. But I do have many trainings that I've done on this. So we've done over 250 trainings in the last 12 months or so. And in there, you will find a lot of training if you're really looking to try to figure out how do I get in the door. If you're part of the GovCon Sustaining membership, then you'll find a lot of this training all pulled together as courses in there, and those are free for you. But keep in mind the second step, and I mentioned this a minute ago, the second step to the 7-step process for federal revenue success that we teach is targeting, right? That's identifying the right people to help you get in an agency. So when you want to get into an agency, but you don't know anyone, it begins with building a targeted list of people before you then begin to outreach, right? And so make sure you take advantage of all the available resources that we make available for free out there. Go download those directories, like I said a second ago. And when you do, you'll find yourself accelerating the process of getting into an agency because you got some good focuses or receptivity to reach out to. If you found the training valuable today, do me a favor, become a member of the Sustaining membership and help others benefit from your support. If your company is struggling with starting and building relationships at an agency, consider our 90-day BD Accelerator workshop. If you're interested and your company has already got some traction, you're looking to go to the next level, just reach out to me on LinkedIn. Happy to talk to you about it. And then remember, government contracting, it is not a secret, right? It's just a process. I'll see you in the next training.